Erik Larson had a tweet where he asked, what was the last book you were so excited for that you read it in your car? You got the usual shill answers, but then you got a few people admitting that it's been over 20 years. One guy said this book, Batman, back when he was 14 in 1986. I should have just said the Comicsgate books come in the mail, but he would probably just block me. I'd love to see someone say Cyberfrog or Jawbreakers, but that probably wouldn't go over well. It's a weird crowd of people that love SJW comics so much, but they don't buy them, because virtue signaling on Twitter is free. Batman, The Dark Knight Returns, 1986. The 80s. Why do some stories seem to create believable other worlds where so many fail? I think one reason is that they take themselves seriously. Modern writers almost always completely fail in this regard. The writers aren't writers, they are diversity hires or work girlfriends. Nerdette's Newsstand did a humorous talk on the writer of The Amazing Mary Jane. It was a pretty girl with a huge rack who couldn't write. So, how do pretty girls with huge racks but no talent get jobs that they're completely unable to perform? I'm not saying that she, I'll say, blew her way into the position, but if her boss is a guy, then you may as well hire a pretty girl who can't write as an ugly girl who can't write. Obviously, you wonder, why not just hire a guy who can write? But Marvel gets no diversity points, or DC in this case, for hiring your average guy. And since chicks didn't grow up reading comics books, they are completely unable to write them. In general, women aren't as good as men in fiction. Nonfiction is more their area to shine. Women can't write male characters at all. You may counter that the inverse is also true, and you may be right. But men don't care if women are written well, and men are 95% of the customer base. So women writers are going to drastically decrease sales. Of course, Marvel and DC don't care about sales. I assume that they just want to maintain the IP rights, or maybe since the comics is such a small percentage of the parent company, they simply get subsidized to write anything, so long as something goes out each month. And from what I gather on Twitter, which is cancer by the way, Comicsgate, wow, more on that later, just freaking A. More on that later. The soy people really are drinking the Kool-Aid. Or either they're actual racist, sexist zealots, or they have to pretend to be to keep their jobs. That gives them that sweet, sweet blue check mark. I am assuming when your book sells so poorly, you cannot possibly be getting paid much, because the money has to come from somewhere. And comic books have a lot of overhead. If I have to guess, it's better to gross $1 million on one graphic novel than the same amount sold by 12 magazines. But who knows? Maybe if you work on enough books every month, you can make a good living writing absolute crap. They know the books will sell worse and worse after a few months, so they just cancel these bad books and restart the cycle all over again. For some crazy reason, people want these number ones. But these aren't the old days. Those books were valuable because they were also desirable books. They were well written, edited, and drawn. Another Marvel book about punching Nazis written by a 50-year-old man-baby who can't think of a new storyline. It's not likely to be valuable. Get over it, Mark Waid. That story has been told. Find a new boogeyman. Maybe look in the mirror, because you are the real villain. You know why the Milk Jug Girls were so mad at your boy when he said they were a bunch of untalented whores who sucked their way into the industry? Because they know it's true. They cannot write, and they can't edit. But they are young and pretty and bring their knee pads to lunch meetings. It's said that there is nobody as delusional as a pretty young girl, except maybe the horny guys who hire them. Why were 80s comics better than comics 40 years later? Because the guys in the industry got there on merit, not simply because they had a pussy. Men actually have to be able to sell product, except for Mags, but he has trans privilege. He can't write. Instead, he rips off plots from his childhood films and uses them as comic book plots. The joke that isn't a joke is that if he didn't wear a dress, you would never have heard of him. Brian Visaggio was an unknown. Mags is stunning and brave, and sort of in demand for smaller publishers. The problem is that he can't actually write, or perhaps it's more accurate to say that he chooses not to. His latest book, Dr. Mirage 3, the only thing I can say about it is that the colors are very cool. Big modern art style. But in no way anything written by Mags is worth $4. $1.50? Sure. Use the alternative model. Just admit your books aren't worth $4. Find a new model that works. People are willing to gamble on a weird new book when they only have to pay $1.50. Why was Batman so good? Look at the art. It was highly stylized, but avoided being silly because it took itself very seriously. It wasn't afraid to reach for the stars, to strive for grace and beauty, to inspire new generations of artists and storytellers. Of course, it wasn't perfect, but at least it tried. Was it left-wing even back then? Of course. Most writers and artists are simple-minded leftists who feel more than they think. Comicsgate is an exception to the rule, but it's rare. Tim Lim and EVS may write about bunnies and frogs, but their heads aren't filled with fluff and nonsense. I read this book a long time ago and had a very positive experience with it, but I hesitate to reread it now because I assume now I will notice that all the gang members are blonde-haired and blue-eyed. All right, Nazis! Before that was cool. Speaking of that, I got the director's cut of The Immortal Hulk. Al Ewing is insanely obsessed with socialists of the national variety. I just can't understand why he and the other professionals don't address the commies. It really activates the old almonds. Why Immortal Hulk sells 40,000 issues is completely beyond me. A cut of the art in Batman is pretty... A lot of the art in Batman is pretty quick. They save the details for where it's needed. And I will forgive Batman for having a white guy with a 45 robbing the parents, because when it was written, it probably was an Irish or Italian guy. They are people of color, but of the lighter skin variety. The art is so fantastically stylized. You see people as you feel, not an actual representation. It's hard to overlook that the robbers and pimps have white skin. As a kid, I didn't notice it, but as an adult, I see this kind of propaganda and cringe. The art and storyline, though, are so good that I'll just have to go through the book and color the faces the right shade. Just kidding. Or am I? Another thing you notice about Batman is there is a lot of writing, lots of small text. But unlike modern books, it's good. You feel that you're getting your money's worth. The book is a slow read because there's so much to read. But it's awesome. You see the characters as they see themselves. Harvey Dent still sees himself as he was before surgery. It's an effective descent into madness. If you haven't read this, you really got to pick it up. It's available in graphic novel. I don't know how many issues in the graphic novel. I don't know. Somebody borrowed it and never returned it, so I'll have to get another one. This kind of simple, effective art. Oh, wow, fantastic. It's so ridiculous. You get these, in terms of realism, yeah, these red eyes, these red glasses, whatever, it's just representative. And when you see Batman, he's just, the cool thing about Batman, I was thinking about this the other night, is how stylized the cape is. They just, when they need to make it huge, like a 10-meter long cape, they'll do it. They'll just throw it in there just to make it more effective. Okay, this image. Of course, there are artists nowadays who can draw like this. It's not that this is that spectacular a drawing, though it is pretty solid and pretty simple. But the story sets it up well with this kind of, like a lot of the story pages of these small boxes of dialogue, like it's supposed to be a TV screen, I guess, setting up future characters, Robin. And then you have this boom, this just huge creature, this old man who's, probably taking growth hormones, steroids, and all kinds of stuff, descending from above with his, his cape. And he does it in kind of a blue and gray uniform and yellow, and it's kind of silly. It's not, like if you're doing a movie, you'd put him in a black uniform just to make it, glossy and slick. But the thing is, the story is so good that he gets away with wearing this kind of silly costume and just doing the most incredible things. and you never stop and think, well, wait, is he super powered or is he superhuman in some way? He's got to have something going on. You just don't bother thinking about it. The story takes you along so quickly. And you're not going to see this kind of stuff nowadays. Well, you don't see this kind of stuff nowadays. I don't think they're capable of writing like this nowadays. Oh, look, okay, fair enough. You got one bad black guy. I don't think you would see this even nowadays. I think pretty much everyone is not going to be is going to have white skin. But at least they're teaming up. So, I mean, this is in 86, and even in 86, they were very, very politically correct, because I don't know what this guy's supposed to be. I can't tell, maybe Asian? I don't know what kind of gang it's supposed to be. Usually most gangs are not mixed race, but whatever. This is, like I said, if you haven't read it, it's worth. Look at this. Look at the shading on that. Look at that. The cops are, they're one rookie cop and the one experienced cop, and the shading on the cape. It's not a complicated drawing, but it's so effective, so amazingly effective. It's finding Two-Face. I read this, I don't know, I mean, I didn't read it in 86, but I read it sometime after that, probably in the 90s when I got the graphic novel, The Joker. Everyone in this book is good. It's like, it has the most ridiculous storyline, but that was the difference to me from DC and Marvel, is that DC took itself more seriously and I know that people use the phrase dark, so it's so kind of overused, but it really took itself seriously, and it was kind of making fun of these left-wing political pundits at the time, these talking heads on TV who, they're all left-wing, and it's just silly propagandists who are just trying to sell ad space. Nowadays, you wouldn't see this kind of stuff. These left-wing talking heads. It would be a substitute for Fox. What they do now is they don't show a substitute for CNN, like, I don't know, TNN or something. They'll do Fox, and it'll be like Mox News or something. So every joke is against the right. Where back here, at least the media was correctly portrayed, and these egghead experts and psychologists were portrayed as what they were, far left extremists. It's just that the criminals weren't. The criminals were mostly not black or Latino, which is kind of silly, but at least there has some balance to it. And you get these long text boxes. This is a lot. This is one page. This is a lot going on in one page. I mean, think how many panels this is. 16 little sub-panels. A lot going on. There's a lot to read, but it's not like in Squirrel Girl when they do these panels with the small writing underneath it and then side panels with like jokes. There's nothing in Squirrel Girl that has ever made me laugh. I am literally a better writer than anyone who has ever written Squirrel Girl. And the thing is, most normies could write a better Squirrel Girl than the people who write Squirrel Girl. It's like they're terminally unfunny, but the worst part about people who are unfunny, who work for the mainstream, is that they don't know it. There are a lot of normies who know that humor is not their strong point, so they just they stick with what they're good at. But the thing is, when you get hired on merit, it's a whole different experience from when you get hired on. Look at how effective this scene is. When you get hired simply because you have a vagina. Why did you get hired? Oh, well, because I'm from Pakistan, or because I'm female, or because I'm trans. Well, like, your boy always said, that's all you have to do to continue keeping that job, is you simply have to continue to be trans. Of course, you've got to be far left, or at least left of center. I mean, you wouldn't even get a job in any comics, any mainstream comics, if you were out of the closet right of center. It would just never happen. And who was it? I was trying to talk to who was that guy who was on EVS's show? Oh, that big guy with a German name. I forget the dude, but he's huge. He's like 400 pounds. I'm not trying to make fun of his size. I'm just trying to describe him. And he hates EVS and he hates Comic Gates. I want to say like Kurt Lotz or something. And he's got a YouTube page. So I sent him a message. Hey, I want to ask you some questions about your feelings on Comics Gate. He never got back to me. But he was saying something in a live stream about how he said, well, there are plenty of Republicans working at comics. So I kept asking him, well, where are they? Who are they? Who's a Republican who works in the mainstream? And of course, he never got back to me, because how could he? You think there's anyone who works in the mainstream who's got MAGA on their Twitter bio? There's no fucking way. Ethan, who is a moderate, not far right. He's just your average milquetoast moderate who's voting Republican, but he's right in the middle. I mean, a couple decades ago, he would probably be a Democrat. He wasn't welcome in the industry simply because he looked at Trump and he looked at Hillary and thought, you know what? Yeah, Trump's the better guy for the job. Most people agreed with him. He had to get out of the industry because it was a hostile work environment. Okay, look at these two images. He's above the city in just the most dangerous, insane positions available. If you get any fear of heights, you're going to look at this and the hair on the back of your neck is going to arise because it's total immersion. You are in the scene. You can hear the helicopter. You can feel the cold air blowing past his cape. I mean, everything is he just nails it. The gray uniform, the gray-blue background, it all works together. He takes a shot to the chest, but he explains why he's got this huge chest thing because it's titanium armor or something. He blasts the helicopter with a hook gun, and he's doing just the most insane acrobatic stunts. Like the Spider-Man level stunts of flipping through the air and that kind of stuff. And look at the shading on the top image, the black and white of Batman with the hugely stylized cape that obviously it's not really that big. But he's talking to Harvey Dent, Harvey Dent sees himself still as completely deformed, and he sees Batman as a bat, a monster. So they continue this theme throughout the book, where it's like subconsciously they're seeing themselves as monsters, see each other as monsters, and then in some of the images, some of the bad guys are drawn with like vampire teeth, and they're obviously not meant to be vampires, but they have these sharp serrated, jaws type of teeth, triangular teeth, and it's not meant to be an accurate representation. It's just meant to show you that these people are so evil. They have the red sunglasses on, the red in visor, whatever it is, and they have these sharp teeth coming down. It's in some later books. This is only one, but it's so incredibly effective. The whole book is, The Dark Knight triumphant. That's the next one. Okay, so this first one was The Dark Knight Returns, and it knocks it out of the park. People were talking about books they haven't read and stuff like that, and I mean, there's some, like The Watchmen and stuff, and a lot of people were thinking, I haven't read that, or I haven't read this other book, and it's such an important part of comic culture. I'm assuming everyone, even if you don't like DC, and as a kid I never liked DC because it was way too dark. I liked, Spider-Man and Marvel and Iron Man. Those were kind of silly, insipid comics, but when I was a kid I just, life was hard enough. I didn't want anything darker. I wanted little escapist things to escape into, not anything dark. So I didn't read DC when I was a kid, but as an adult I was able to check it out, and I remember reading this graphic novel as a young adult, and laying down on the floor reading this, and like I was too old. In my mind I felt I was too old to read comics, graphic novels, but I read this and I was just, oh my, I was blown away by the story. And even reading these first few issues now, they're just phenomenal. Anyway, like I said, click the links in the description if you want to support the channel or get on Discord. Send me your art to enter the art contest and donate the art to the channel. Let's see, Patreon, the coffee links, there's Teespring links. There's a bunch of cool t-shirts. And like I said, I will donate all the profits until the end of the year to the Captain Robert April's GoFundMe. The guy was in a horrible accent, fellow YouTuber. All right, guys, like, comment, subscribe. Bianca Fights a Zombie wants your support. Why buy today? I'll thank you for that. It was serendipitous timing. All right, guys, I'll see you next episode.